I have a series called Novel versus Adaptation, where I compare books I've read to the movies or TV shows adapted from them. If I'm watching a movie or TV show and find out that it is adapted from a book, I will most likely read that book. And if you really look into it, a lot of movies and TV shows have been adapted from books. The entertainment industry likes a sure thing, and a book or a book series that already has an established audience is a sure bet. The practice has been around for about as long as the movie industry itself. The 1922 film Nosferatu was adapted from the book Dracula, written by Bram Stoker, which was adapted again 70 years later into Bram Stoker's Dracula. Side note, it was called Nosferatu and not Dracula because they did not purchase the rights from Bram Stoker's widow. But she sued anyway and apparently won. So what is an adaptation? It's basically when you take something from one medium and transfer it into another. You know, book to movie, book to TV show, play to movie, play to book. When you talk of adaptation, it infers adjustment, meaning the property will have to change to fit its new medium. Why must something change in order to fit its new medium? Every medium has its own set of characteristics. What works in one medium will not necessarily fit in another. Let's look at books, plays, and films. Books can get into a character's head and explains their feelings and motivations. They can thoroughly explore and explain worlds and characters. Plays are more like oral tradition, stories told through dialogue. And films are visual storytelling. You must show, not tell. You can't get into a character's head like in a book, but you can show what they are thinking through visual clues. Now in plays, you can't show visual cues, but you can use subtext and dialogue. Outside of visual cues and subtext, films and plays can use narration to get into a character's head. But personally, I consider narration cheating. If you use narration to explain things instead of taking the time to show it visually, your narrative is going to suffer. Now, an exception to narration is not when it explains what's going on, but when it has commentary, like Carrie in Sex and the City. She usually commentates on what's happening rather than just explaining things away.
New York weather, like a man, can be unpredictable. But that's part of the fun.
So each medium uses a different type of storytelling. So when adapting from one medium to another, it must be adjusted to fit the different type of storytelling. Okay, so I've gotten a lot of flack for my opinion on Fences, Denzel Washington's adaptation of August Wilson's play. But the thing is, it wasn't adapted. It was basically just a play on film. Nothing from the original story was changed to make it more cinematic. The audience was still dependent on the characters to tell the story. There was no showing. Plenty of times, actions that happened that was vital to the plot happened off screen, and the audience was dependent on the characters to retell what just happened, instead of writing a new scene where we actually see what happened. Great acting, great story, not a great adaptation. Compare this to the recent adaptation of Wicked, which had already been adapted from a book to a play and a play to a movie. I haven't seen the play, but I couldn't point out any scenes where they tell instead of show. Everything was shown, from Elphaba's questioning conception to her family dynamic growing up, protecting her little sister, being ignored by her father, being raised by Nanny Bear. The only thing that was really told and not shown was how Nessa Rose was born. But that was okay because that story revealed character. Elphaba believed she was the cause of everything wrong that happened to her family. Wicked also took advantage of being able to film in many locations, not just in the entire movie, but sometimes within the same song. It really leaned into visual storytelling. Another example of a great adaptation is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It is beloved because of how it was visually captured for the screen. But a complaint I hear over and over again from the fans of the book is how Tom Bombadil was left out. I can't remember where on the journey they meet Tom Bombadil, but it was either on the way to Rivendell or on the way to Mordor. Either way, the travelers sit and rest and get to know Tom Bombadil. And he is a delightful little side quest on their journey. But in the grand scheme of things, he has absolutely nothing to do with the plot. The theatrical versions of the films was around 3 hours long. The extended versions added like 40 minutes to each film. And everything in the original release and the extended cut was relevant to the plot. How long would the film have been if it added the little pleasant little side quest of Tom Bombadil? And how indulgent can you expect an audience already sitting through a 3-hour movie to be? There have definitely been times where I've been sitting through a long-ass movie thinking, this don't have to be here. Also, I keep coming across people on the internet who have grown up reading the Harry Potter books, who are looking forward to the television series because they're hoping that they will adapt things into the series that wasn't adapted into the movies. But what they fail to realize is you can't put every single thing that happened in the book into a movie. You just can't. Film scripts used to average around 120 pages, which is like 120 minutes. You count each page as a minute. Now they are averaging around 100 pages, except for your tentpole movies, which are averaging around 2.5 to 3 hours long. But whether your script is 120 pages or 180 pages, books tend to be twice as long and more, and have way more words on a page than scripts do. Now, I will admit, Order of the Phoenix stripped out a lot of things that was relevant to Harry Potter's character in that book. And I believe a lot of the changes were made to soften Harry's character. In Order of the Phoenix, we get the first clues that Harry and Voldemort are connected. We don't know why, they just are. And that connection is beginning to affect Harry's personality. For one, Harry is a little entitled. 5th year is when they picked one girl and one boy to be prefects. Harry, as well as everyone else, expected him to be picked as a prefect because he was like Dumbledore's favorite. When Ron was picked instead of him, Harry was pissed. Although they showed that Harry did detention with Umbridge, they didn't show that he did it several times, and that she kicked him, Fred, and George off the Quidditch team. Basically because Harry had zero chill that year and couldn't hold his tongue around her at all. Then there's the end of the novel where Harry destroys Dumbledore's office like a rock star. It was the result of a year of dealing with this animosity within him on his own because he was isolated, and on top of everything else, the adult he was closest to had just been killed. Think of how in Deathly Hallows they acted after prolonged exposure to a Horcrux.
I'm doing everything I can.
You're not doing enough!
That was Harry all throughout the 5th year. I don't think they wanted to show Harry acting like an asshole. But outside of that, you had to realize that the books just got longer and longer until the last book was longer than the first 3 or 4 books put together. There was just no way everything was going to fit into the movie. Events and characters had to be cut for time. One thing I'm glad didn't make it into the movies was SPEW, the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare. I made a whole video on why I think that storyline was screwed up. And if I'm being honest, the later books get repetitious, and I like the way the movies condensed the plot and cut out the fat. But Harry wasn't the only one who was softened in the adaptation. Snape, as horrible as he is worse in the book. Hermione is insufferable in the books. Every single book, all she does is disagree with Harry's ideas of what's going on or what they should do. And Harry always ends up being right. Mrs. Weasley got on my goddamn nerves in the book. I especially hated how she felt the need to be overprotective of Harry in The Order of the Phoenix. He wasn't even her damn child. Like, you may not like him hearing all the scary ideas or whatnot, but Voldemort was after Harry. Protecting him from the truth was not protection at all. Frankly, I preferred the movie versions, even though I still think Snape is an asshole. Half-Blood Prince had a completely different tone than the movie, and Harry was a completely different character.
I just know.
You just know.
Again, I prefer the movie. Yes, in making an adaptation, change is inevitable. There is also a big difference between a good adaptation and a good movie. Sometimes things are faithful to a fault. I think 2009's Watchmen fits this. Hardcore fans loved it. Newbies like me were bored to tears. An example of a movie that was a bad adaptation, but still a good movie, is Mansfield Park. I mean, the main character was completely different from the book, and I think I know why. Many fans of Jane Austen like Mansfield Park the least of all of her books. I, weirdo that I am, love it. People don't like the main character, Fanny Price, and find her to be passive. But I think this is a mischaracterization. Fanny is painfully shy and has only opened up to one, well, maybe two people in her entire life. There are several instances in the book where people are trying to force her to do something which she feels is morally wrong. And she stubbornly refuses, no matter how hard or how often they come at her. A passive character would have just went along with what they wanted her to do, but she actively fought against it. In the film, Fanny isn't shy at all. As a matter of fact, they decided to model her character after Jane Austen, even down to the accepting of a proposal just to renege on it the next morning. I like Mansfield Park, the movie, but it completely loses the point of the book. The father was so busy being this stern taskmaster that he didn't teach his children how to be good people. He just taught them how to act good in front of him. For as soon as his back was turned, they were showing all of their asses. Whereas the movie wanted to make a point about slavery, that was nice and all, but those people did not care about something they were so removed from. So how do you get something to be both a good movie and a good adaptation? Well, you start with the main theme of the book, the whole point it was trying to convey, and you start with finding the best way to portray that visually. Lord of the Rings was the ultimate battle between good and evil, and it was about how even the most unexpected people could play a part. This was portrayed by the hobbits being central to the fight, with an elf and a dwarf becoming besties even though they were disposed to dislike each other.
He was twitching because he's got my axe embedded in his nervous system.
With a woman taking up a sword to fight.
I am no man.
With Gollum and how he switched sides multiple times.
Leave now and never come back!
Every film in the trilogy portrayed people who were at odds with each other, who had to get past their issues in order to fight the good fight. Every storyline was well acted, and the film overall was visually stunning. And to keep from interrupting the flow of a great story, they cut out the true ending for the Shire and how the battles made it out to them. Because Return of the King already had multiple endings, and adding that in would have started the story all over again from the beginning. This is already getting long, but I had to add another adaptation that completely missed the entire point of the book. The Duff. Yes, I watched the movie and read the book, but let me tell you, besides the title and the name of characters, they have nothing in common. The book was written by a young woman. She might have even been a teenager when she wrote it. The movie was obviously written by a middle-aged, out-of-touch man. So in the book, one character tells the main character that she's the Duff of her friend group, the designated ugly fat friend.
That's your job as their Duff.
Sorry, as their what?
Duff. D-U-F-F. Designated ugly fat friend. Okay, I mean, like every group of friends has one, the one who doesn't look as good, thus making their friends look better, the one who's approachable and easy to talk to because no one's trying to get in their pants.
The person they keep around to make themselves look better. The main character internalizes this and thinks about it a lot, but it's not her main or only issue. The movie makes it her whole conflict, plus they make it seem like everyone around her sees her this way as well. And she must fight to change her image by getting advice from the boy who called her the Duff in the first place. The book is about a teenage girl whose parents are on the verge of a divorce, and her father falls off the wagon because of it, and other teenagery issues that she had. I I'm sorry, I had to jump in and say this real quick about the difference between the book and the movie, and the book being written by a teenage girl and the movie being written by a middle-aged man. Because in the book, the mother becomes a motivational speaker, starts traveling, leaves the father, and the father falls off the wagon and becomes an alcoholic again. But in the movie, it's the other way around. The father leaves the mother, she becomes an alcoholic, and then all of a sudden cleans herself up and becomes a motivational speaker. There was no reason to make that change except for the fact that a man wrote this movie and changed everything about it for no reason at all. I hate it. 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 In the book, only one person ever called her the Duff, and he doesn't become her life coach. He becomes her secret friend with benefits to keep her mind off of all of her issues. The point of the book is not her being the Duff. The point of the book is her internalizing all of her issues and running away from them in different ways, including sex, instead of facing them head on. If the movie had adopted the actual plot of the book, it would have been so much better. Instead, it's less than mediocre. So a successful film adaptation must balance respecting the source material with making the most out of telling a visual story. So, what's your favorite adaptation of a novel? Tell me in the comments below. Also, come back Friday when I will be talking about how Stranger Things plays with our emotions. If you enjoy my videos, please support the channel by subscribing or donating through Ko-fi or Cash App. Or you could just purchase merch related to my fantasy novel, or just buy my fantasy novel, Fairy Princess. And let's continue the conversation in the Fairy Princess Facebook group. All links in the description. Thanks.